My name is Aly Mageed, and as you have in your flyers, some information about me. I represent Islam here, and I present the Islamic Mosque and Religious Institute of Grand Rapids. I'll try in the next 15 minutes to give you a little bit of a flavor of what Islam talks about when it addresses the issue of poverty, which is the inability to provide, basic necessities as we would see it. It's interesting, Islam, when it looks at what basic necessities are, it actually defines them and puts at the very top the ability to practice belief as a basic necessity. And then talks about the general food, water, shelter, healthcare, procreation or race preservation, and security. And so a Muslim is instructed to protect all those five worthy issues of protection: protection of religion, protection of self, protection of the intellect or mind or the ability to acquire knowledge, protection of offspring, and protection of wealth and possessions. And it differentiates between necessities and those vital issues that we all have to have versus conveniences, obviously the non-vital but would make remove some difficulties versus the refinements and enjoyments. And it also addresses the issues of the causes of poverty. And it specifically says that really the cause of poverty on earth is not the lack of resources, is not the fact that God has given us all less than what we really need. It's not that. And we all can look into statistics and look into various sources of information to really be able to see quickly that we really, as human race on earth, we really have a lot more than what meets our basic needs. It's just some of us really had decided that they wanted more of the conveniences and we wanted more of the refinements, if you will. And even though that could deprive some of us the basic needs. One statistic that really struck me is the fact that 10% of the population on earth uses 85% of the water resources. So those who really don't have, those the 90%, they are supposed to have only 15% of the water resources. And not only that, unfortunately, those 15% are the ones who are living under unsanitary conditions and living under issues of deprivation of even healthcare needs and so forth. And we all know that the UNICEF had said that 16,000 children die every single day, not from diseases, they are really dying from hunger. And unfortunately, they die an invisible type of death. And not a lot of us, unfortunately, is aware. Islam really sees wealth as a temptation. Islam looks at any worldly resources as not ours to keep individually, but it's ours as a race to make sure that it's well distributed. And Islam looks at the original wealth distribution as this is God's will, not to punish those who don't have enough, but actually to see how that person who doesn't have enough and that person who has more than he or she needs, how they are going to behave. When we have excess, we think of it as it's ours to keep and not to give and not to share. And when we are tested with poverty, then we start looking and asking for help and start reflecting upon ourselves and start to see how can I do to really get out of this. There is also a way of life, asceticism, or the denouncing or renouncing worldly possessions, material things, that one voluntarily chooses to be poor, to give away what he or she may have completely, and live a life that is based on meeting just the basic necessities. So how does Islam respond to poverty? The first is that it instructs us to feel it, to instructs us to walk in the shoes of someone who doesn't have the basic necessities. And that's one of the major wisdom behind fasting during the month of Ramadan. So the month of Ramadan, actually, today is the first day of Sha'ban, according to the lunar calendar, 12th month. The 9th month is the month of Ramadan. Today is the beginning of the 8th month, which is Sha'ban. So 30 days from now, Muslims will start a month-long fasting from sunrise to sunset. And that fasting is abstaining from food and drinks, as well as some other things. Here in West Michigan, I guess in the month of July, it will be, sunset will be probably 9:20 or so in the evening. So fasting from 4:30 in the morning, I think that's it's a dawn, not really sunrise. So about 4:30 to 9:30, so quite a long day. So that gives you an opportunity, gives me an opportunity to walk in the shoes of someone who cannot meet those basic necessities. Someone who cannot eat and drink, not because of the fact that he is fasting voluntarily, but the fact that he has no access to them. And if you would imagine at 9 o'clock at the evening, what would I feel if someone is asking me for some money to buy something to eat or to feed his family? So that's the first response, is feel it, walk in that shoes. The second way of handling this issue is some orders, some obligations. And as Rabbi Shadik talked about the sadaqah. And the way I'm saying sadaqah, actually, that's the Arabic word for the same thing, basically, sadaqah. And sadaqah comes from Arabic root sad dot kaf, sadaqah, which means someone who believed the promise, someone who believed that there is a fulfillment of a certain action that he or she would do now. And that fulfillment of the promise from an Islamic point of view is that God is asking you to give now for a goal or a fulfillment of something later on. And as Fred said, that's not necessarily, and actually it is not that you would pay $1 today and you get $1,000 later on. It's more that spiritual attainment that you would feel now and also later on, that you would grow spiritually when you give out of your core as well. The third is encouraging to give away in more of a charity. So even after you meet those obligations, that 2.5%, there is an instruction to even give more. So start giving more from what you truly need. The Quran says, for example, loan to God, a good loan, and He will multiply it boundlessly for you. So one would say, does God really need to be loaned? He has everything. I mean, he's saying that in order to encourage us, like as if the poor people on earth today, as if, God forbid, He is not able to provide for them. He wants you, who has more, to provide for them. Even though, as the Rabbi said, He definitely can provide for every single creature and give everybody everything. But that's not the way it is, in order to have that wisdom of seeing, how are you going to react when you don't have enough? Am I going to steal? Or am I going to try my best to work? Or am I going to wait for a hand-me-down? And for those who have more, are you going to keep it and keep hoarding? Or are you going to give? Quran also says, assist one another in the doing of good and righteousness, and assist not one another in sinful acts and transgression. And there is a hadith from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or a kind of a story, where he actually went home on the first day of celebration after the, commemorating the pilgrimage. And during that day, there is a tradition that Muslims will sacrifice an animal, as you know the story of Prophet Abraham. And so when he went back home, asked his wife if they have anything to eat. And she said, the lamb that we sacrificed, we gave it away completely, but I kept a little bit and I'm making a meal for you. And he said, no, Aisha, you really are getting it wrong. It should be the other way around. You have actually kept all of it to us, except that small piece that you're cooking today. It's really what you give away is truly what you keep, not what you keep in this world and you consume. It's what you give away to others. That's truly what you keep. He also said, not a believer is he who sleeps with full stomach while his neighbor is going to bed hungry. So we're instructed to act locally, to act with our neighbors first. If our neighbor, and as the Prophet said also in another hadith, that Archangel Gabriel had persisted on him talking about the rights of the neighbor, that he actually thought that the next thing that he was going to say is that the neighbor also has the right for inheritance. That it is our duty is to really act locally within our neighbors and make sure that our neighbors do have what they need as well. So Islam deals with both sides of the issue. It recommends and actually instructs and orders the rich to help the poor, and the poor to try their best to get out of where they are. And a story also about the Prophet that may illustrate some of those issues. That someone had come to the Prophet while he was sitting with some of the companions and then was begging, was asking for help. And the Prophet approached them and said, do you have anything that you could sell in your house, in your possession? And do you have this? And the person kept saying, no, 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 no. And the only thing that he really had was just a small mug made of copper. So he said, go home and get that mug for me. And when he brought it back, he approached the companions and asked them to have an auction for that mug. So he said, who would pay whatever, $10 for that? And until it finally sold actually for $2, which was still more than what its actual value was. And gave the beggar the $2 and said, $1 is to go buy food for you and your family today. And the other $1 is go buy an axe. Can you work? He said, yes, I can. He said, go buy an axe and bring it to me. So when he brought him the axe, he showed him, with the help of some of the companions, how to cut wood, and then instructed him to go and cut some wood and bring it back. And after the man did so and sold the wood for him and gave him the proceeds for that and said, half of those proceeds keep for your family sustenance tomorrow, the other half keep for later, and come to me after 14 days. And 14 days passed, and the man had come back with some sum of money that he had saved. And he instructed him then to go buy an animal, a donkey, to help him with his daily activity now, the job that he found. And basically, converted the one from asking for help to an entrepreneurial person who actually has a business now. So it kind of shows the steps that from a Muslim point of view, some would need to do. Initially, there is an emergency, basic needs that need to be met. And then find jobs for people, help them to save and invest, and hopefully get back on their feet again. And show the top management involvement in this kind of a plan. So that kind of sums up to me the way that Islams really want us to deal with poverty.